all of you.
And I just started recording, so I wanted to let folks know that we will be recording this microlearning. We recorded last week's microlearnings, and we intend to record all future microlearnings and get them up on our website. They're not up there yet. We think we'll be able to post last week's by the end of this week. And then once we get that first one up, we'll go from there. We're building the web page, essentially. Okay, let me just pop out of here for 1 second because I'm realizing this is running itself along and I didn't want that kind of slideshow.
Gotcha.
We'll just do that. Oh, good Lord.
I know, it's like gonna want you to change the
Of course it's gonna do that now to me. Don't do it. Well, we'll just do it and I'll pause it as needed. So,
okay.
We also have Pete with us here today. Pete, you want to give a wave? Pete's going to let folks in from the waiting room and monitor our chat if we get stuck anywhere. All right, so this is our plan for the day. We're going to start with some basics on Zoom, even though you have probably had them before, but if you haven't, we'll do a quick overview. We'll touch base about microlearnings in general, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the technology options that have been out there for folks, the 3 stages of crisis response, some challenges, what we need, tips and tricks, questions, and closing and evaluation. I am, like many of us, home with some kiddos today, and I think one is sneaking up behind me. So I just wanted to tell you that before you start to see her come into the screen. But that's keeping it real for all of us, right? So, Zoom basics. For people who haven't been on a big Zoom call like this before, it's great to keep yourself muted. I see that most of you are. Thank you. There's a chat box down at the bottom. If you want to tell us anything, feel free to send a chat.
Can everybody just take a moment right now to find the chat box and open that pop-up window so we know that you have found it? And you will notice that you can open it and close it at any point in time. And you can chat to everyone, or you could open that little caret and chat to just the hosts or other folks. Nice. Anita has shown us she has found it, and she says hello to everyone. Perfect. Good work, you guys.
There's a couple of different ways you can look at everybody on Zoom. So in your upper right-hand corner, there's a speaker view. And if you click on it, it'll offer a gallery view. That gives you the Brady Bunch tiles. And those can be good to switch back and forth. We will utilize breakout rooms today. So some folks have their mics muted and their cameras off, and that's great and fine. You should be aware that we will lump you into groups for a couple of interactive discussions. And if you were doing the type of thing where you have it open, but you've navigated away and you're actually working on something else, you might all of a sudden be in a very small group with a bunch of people.
Recognized.
I'm sorry, say that again?
It sounded like it was coming from Zoom, but I'm not sure.
All right, well, we'll go with it. Other than that, we're going to do some breakout rooms. We're going to do some polls. We'll do some learning and we'll have some fun. Sound okay? Okay.
The last thing I would just add, Cassie, is that we did schedule an hour for up to an hour for this call, and we will just kind of see how far we get and how much time, and we can certainly stay on for the whole hour. If we feel like we're kind of done sooner, we can wrap it up early, but just wanted to give people a sense of the time frame.
All right. Pete.
Did you want people to use the chat to ask questions?
Yeah, so the chat, if you have any questions about the content or anything we're talking about, feel free to type a chat or raise your hand. And if we can pause reasonably and bring you into the conversation, we will.
Pete will be watching for the hand raises as well as us. And so if at any point in time you're not being noticed, you can chat, hey, I was raising my hand. Hello, I'm over here. Because it is interesting to monitor 3 different giant sets of cameras as well. So we'll do our best to keep abreast of that.
Yeah, we're up to lots of folks today. It's good to see you all. So we figured we would start with just a little question, a poll about who's here. So I'm hopeful you can all see this and click on it, but we just wanted to get a sense of who's here today. And so we'll give folks a couple of minutes to be clicking on this. If you're on the phone, you probably cannot access this, which also reminds me of one other tidbit. If you did call in by phone and you're not able to see us, or if you used your computer for video and then called in by phone for audio, when we go into small groups, there's a possibility that your voice and your face will be separated, and that's always a good chuckle. So just be aware that that's a thing. All right, it looks like we are mostly finished. I'll give another 20 seconds or so for this poll, and then
Cassie,
we'll close it.
While
Go
they're,
ahead,
while they're wrapping up, if you want to send a quick message to Pete, if you have your phone separate from audio, separate from your login, we can know that and label that accordingly. So Cassie can drag and drop both your audio and your video into the same breakout group if needed.
I think.
Yeah. You just,
No,
yeah, it's just
like
helpful when you've got them labeled the same. If you don't know whose phone goes to what video, that's when it gets tricky.
All right.
Wow. Good mix of people.
Yeah, so here, I'm going to share this so you can all see it. So we've got front-end folks, ongoing folks, leadership folks, community partner folks, and some other folks. Some of you who are others, would you mind typing your role into the chat? I'm guessing we've probably got some RCs, some central office folks, CWTP, that's right. DD, awesome. Case aids, awesome.
Very
This
cool.
is fun. All right, great.
Welcome, everyone.
So if that, let's see, parent recruitment, wonderful. So I'm gonna actually pass this over to Nancy for a little bit, and she's gonna jump in and talk to us a bit about what the department's stance is and the division stance on remote usage of technology for remote contact.
Sure. Thanks, Cassie. Yeah, so since this is a micro learning on remote safety assessment, we thought it would be helpful to address where the division is at with the various platforms and applications that are available out there in the technology world. So the state of Vermont has two secure platforms that we have been given approval to use. And that is, those two are Microsoft Teams and Skype for Business. We understand that not all of the families that we serve have Microsoft Teams or Skype for Business already downloaded on their phones and laptops ready to use, and that sometimes you may run into some barriers with those. If that is the case, I mean, well, first and foremost, we ask that everybody attempt to use those two platforms to work with your families. If you're running into barriers and that's not working, IT has let us know that FaceTime and Google Duo are the two applications we should use as sort of like the plan B. FaceTime, if your clients have an iPhone, then FaceTime shouldn't be a problem. If they don't, Google Duo is a pretty easy app to use. I've downloaded it on my phone. I've tried it out just a little bit. It doesn't seem to have too many glitches or barriers. However, if you try that and you're still having a hard time communicating with your families or connecting with your families, and you're finding that you have to use an application like Facebook Messenger, for example, just please know that that is not a secure platform, and there are privacy risks in using that platform, and that should be communicated to the individual or the family that you're talking to right away. Like right off the bat, after you introduce yourself, let them know that that's not a secure platform, and encourage them to switch over to another platform so that you can discuss the child protection matter at hand in a private setting.
Nancy,
in
can I just share one real quick thing about Facebook Messenger that I've heard from other jurisdictions?
Sure,
Is they're
please.
facing the same security risk with that. And that one thing they've done is made sure that they shared confidential information, maybe in a secure email prior to that. And then they've discussed a non kind of identifying things when they were in the video chat on Messenger or something of that nature.
Right. Yeah. No, thanks for that reminder, Heather. I think we also talked about for families who, if FaceTime Messenger is the only sort of video platform that's available, if they have a phone that they're able to use, using the phone number to have those private discussions. But then if you still need like a visual of the home, then using FaceTime Messenger in that way. And then finally, in terms of the use by our community partners of Zoom, the commissioner has given approval for our partners to utilize Zoom to handle confidential matter with our clients, as long as the partner can ensure that the confidentiality will be protected. So, for example, I think some of our providers are using Zoom to conduct family safety planning meetings, and we've seen some questions about whether or not it's okay for our staff to participate in those meetings. And the answer is yes, because that assurance around the client's confidentiality is being worked out in the contracts. I'm not sure, Sheila, if you're on the call, or Suzanne, if I've missed anything. But those are sort of the key points of our division's stance of where we're at right now with all of these applications. And I just want you all to know, I've been on some New England calls and some national calls, and we are not alone in this grappling. Every child protection agency in the country is sort of holding some of these questions and grappling with some of these issues. So we're in good company, folks.
Nancy, there's a question for you from Morgan, asking if there's written instructions for how to invite clients to a Skype meeting, or for how to have families download Skype for Business.
Thank you, Morgan. Yes, well, I should say not yet. We are working on that. Suzanne Shibley is actually working on developing that guidance with IT. So I will let her know that this question came up, and we'll see if we can move that along, because I know that would be helpful. And if you have any questions, I guess that was one of the other bullet points I forgot to mention. If you have any questions about this, or maybe suggestions for the guidance, please reach out to me and or Suzanne Shibley, and we'll make sure that gets addressed in the guidance.
Great.
One of the things that we kept chatting about when we were planning was a curiosity about what platforms people are using. You know, we wanted to start out with the guidance so that you're clear about what the expectations and the parameters are, but we've all been managing through a global pandemic and kind of getting stuff done in any way we can get stuff done. So I have a poll I'm about to launch where we want to get a sense from you about what technologies you have been using, even if they're not the ones that are sort of like the expectations. And I want to let you know we created it so that it's anonymous. So if you're willing to answer, I'm going to put this up, and this is just to help us get a sense, because it will continue to inform the process. So yeah, if you're willing to weigh in and vote, go for it.
Yeah, and please let us know what you've been using, because this is a question that IT keeps asking me, like, well, what are people using? What's working? Like, what are they finding helpful? And I'm not able to answer because I really don't know. So your input is really, really valuable here.
If you are clicking other and you're willing to write in the chat what that is, that would be great too, but you should know that's not anonymous then. Your name will be attached to it.
Some examples of other would be WhatsApp, or some other kind of platform like that.
I'm gonna give it another 20 seconds and then I'll close this poll. So you can see.
WebEx could be another example.
All right. Here come the results.
Google Duo came up in the chat. Thank you.
Great, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna hang on to all this, and this will help inform our stuff too. You've probably noticed already that the flow for today will be a little bit of give and take. We are looking to offer resources and have rich discussion, and really also wanting to hear from everyone about what they're using, what they're needing, what's successful, what we need to keep building, if that makes sense.
Thanks
So
to our,
learning all around.
and
Go
thanks
ahead,
to our
Heather.
our chatters have added some additional others. So thank you so much. That's super helpful.
Oh, great. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing this. And then Heather, I'm gonna pull up the slides and pass this over to you to talk us through
Great.
kind of our next section. And I fixed that timing issue, at least I think I did.
Okay. Here we go. So hi, everybody again. One of the things we always want to do, and you know, all the regular global pandemics that we've participated in, like we have to pretend like this is normal. Well, guess what? It's not normal. There's nothing normal about everything that we've gone through. But there are 3 stages that can help us normalize our own experience. And I'm thinking about you as the workforce. And then we're going to talk about what this means for your role with families. So there was an article that was attached to the invite for this, and if folks didn't have a chance to look at it, you can certainly look at it afterwards. But this author broke down 3 really good stages, and it was in the Chronicle of Higher Education. And the title is Why You Should Ignore All That Coronavirus-Inspired Productivity Pressure, right, that is coming down. And they break down these into 3 stages of kind of our own evolution through this process. If each of you thinks back to the first day that you heard about the virus, and then where it kind of started to creep into the state of Vermont, and you know, hearing about it kind of globally, and then it getting closer and closer to home, that was probably during stage 1. And so that's where we want to think about building your own personal security, making room for the mental adjustment, right, that is being required of you to kind of adapt to whatever's going on in the way in which you've had to stay at home, the social distancing, not being able to go into your office, all these kind of transitions into working remotely. And so during stage 1, to gain security, the recommendation is focusing on food, family, friends, maybe fitness. Sometimes people said that was like part 2 of stage 1, where I could get back to fitness, but it was kind of giving yourself space to acknowledge that if you were waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, that was totally okay. And that in time, right, you can let go of, I'm not as productive as I think I should be, or how are these other people attending to these work projects, or, you know, immediately going out and adjusting to serving families differently. And maybe you felt behind in that. That's kind of part of stage 1. And then as the mental shift begins to occur, you move into stage 2. And that's where you start to reset. You're responding to new crisis situations, and over time, able to begin to kind of feel like I've established that security with myself, with my team, with my coworkers and peers, with my family. I got the homeschooling thing kind of like in a daily routine. And now I can return to a little bit more high performance in my work, in my social life. Who's been on, just show of hands, Zoom happy hours or family gatherings, right? And so that's part of that mental shift. It's creating a new way to kind of be and do on the daily basis without feeling like you're completely paralyzed by this new environment. And then stage 3, right, that's going to come a couple weeks later, is where you're like, okay, this is the new normal. I actually have my creative mind back. And that's where you start to realize that you've made the adjustment. You're feeling your brilliance and your creative juices flowing again. And you're also able to come to that place where you feel like you can better support other people around you. So we'd love to kind of get a sense of how many folks feel like you'd self-identify in which stage. So Cassie's going to put another poll up, and you'll have a chance to anonymously share what stage you're feeling like you're in right at this point, as we're several weeks into the kind of stay-at-home order and ways of being. So go ahead and click on kind of where you feel like you're at. Are you still struggling? Have you made the mental shift? Or are you like rocking and rolling now? You've got this. Awesome participation. Thanks, guys. And it looks like, according to this article, you are right on target for where you should be right now. And I want you to think about, as you're engaging families, wondering what stage they're in and how that's going to impact their ability to be responsive to you, to participate in the work, to feel like they can receive a knock at the door for those who are doing, first response as needed. All of these kind of check-in moments that we can create will help normalize this for families, give them permission to be where they are, and then hopefully inform you how to be creative in your approach. If you're in stage 3 and they're in stage 1, and they're struggling with some of the just getting up out of bed every day or showering or getting their kids organized. This is just a nice way to kind of summarize where people could be, and hopefully will be a nice tool for you to use in the future.
So I just realized you guys can't see it, but there we go. Heather, I don't know if you're following the chat, but there's some great questions. I was thinking the same one, which is, do these have to be linear, or can you kind of
yes, you can totally circulate back and forth, right? 10 steps forward, 2 steps back, or 1 step forward, 10 steps back. Yep, without a doubt. And I think it's dependent on a lot of variables. If anyone's had a family member who's been exposed, or if you've been exposed and have had to quarantine kind of in a unique way from people within the same household, or someone's been ill or you've lost someone, that's going to change, right, your stage pretty quickly. And so just acknowledging this, acknowledging the worries that people have, where maybe someone in their household is a first responder and could potentially bring that exposure home. All of those kinds of things are completely normal. I'm looking at some of the other questions. Hold on, I gotta stop sharing to see that. Yes, you can swim between them. And I love that you guys think that you would be able to utilize this with families. It's always good to start with the check-in. How is everybody at today? I've also found that my own team, right, that's working remotely across the country, who doesn't have to see families directly, but is serving the folks like you guys who do, sometimes just narrowing into a topic. We talked about grocery shopping yesterday, and everybody could relate to like what it's been like to keep your household stocked with food. We did not go into toilet paper and all of that, but you can imagine, right, how that's a way to kind of break the ice a little bit, normalize everybody's experiences, get some kind of life hacks or tips and tricks around that before you go. So I will go ahead and stop there, because you can have some parts of a day where you're totally on, and other parts where you maybe get too much news exposure and then you kind of fall back. Completely and totally normal. You're going to have less productivity, right, in stages 1 and 2 than you will in 3, and that's totally okay. Cassie, I'll pass it back to you.
Sounds good. One of the reasons I like these articles, we've shared the grief framework for the microlearning last week. Pete had sent out Bruce Perry's kind of state-dependent functioning Zoom too. So there's a bunch of different ways we can kind of grab onto this. How are you doing? How are you functioning? And checking in with others about how they're doing and how they're functioning. And whichever one of those resonates the best with you, you can take a little from each model or pull the model that fits most deeply. But what we're really talking about is, are you regulated? Are you okay? And then how do we check in with others? In whatever way that feels genuine for you. So on that topic, let me screen share our next slide here. And, what we're going to do is put you into breakout groups. And we've asked this question before, right? So some of you might have the experience of, how often do I need to go into a breakout group and talk about this? But what we're really trying to get at is, in a small group that I'm about to send you in just a minute or two, we want to hear kind of what uncharted territories you're running into, specifically in terms of remote assessment and planning. As you're living through this pandemic, trying to do your jobs out in the field, what are you running into? So we'll give you about 5 minutes or so to talk about it in small groups. I might pop in and check in on you. Heather might pop in. I might drag some facilitators around. And then when we come back, we'll report out through the chat. Make sense? All right, so you're not going to see the slide when you go into small groups. So write it down if you need to, or somebody just track it here. But what we're going to ask you to talk about is what are you running into? What are the most challenging scenarios you're experiencing?
And the more specific you can be, the better. We'd love to kind of have you share out when you come back, you know, some examples, like a case example or a specific detail that's going to help everybody kind of learn from what your experience has been too. It's also informing your leadership who's participating in this call about what some of the needs of the field might be right now.
Okay, so here you go. You should have an invite and you can click it and then you'll go to your new rooms. Hi, everybody. Matt, you win for best background for sure. Is that your dog or is that one of the options we could all have? We could all have it.
You can go and pick your own. I just went on a Google search and look for a funny photo. And then you could just download it. I have several. I embrace my nerdiness in one and have the tower from Lord of the Rings behind me and all kinds of different things. Yeah.
It's great. I love it. For anyone who's just joining, Matt's walking us through how you get an awesome virtual background like that one.
Everyone should do it. It spices up the chats for sure.
Has anybody seen Daniel's from Middlebury? It's like heaven. I just want to be there.
He does.
Wow.
Oh, Dan, I think your camera was off before, but now I'm going to come find you.
I know, right?
Yeah, I can't find him.
Oh, looking good.
He has the ocean and palm trees in the background, and
yeah,
I
I
just
can
want to
see
be
it.
there.
It's fabulous. Let's all go on a beach vacation, huh?
Let's do it. How was breakouts? Thumbs up? Thumbs down? Thumbs up? Great. All right, so what did you come up with? What we're looking for, some of the things you ran into, some of the challenges that you're experiencing. You can send them through chat. We'll start there. And we might also, if it's something that you want to share with the whole group, let us know and we can call on you. Releases. Hard to separate from work. Yeah.
Yep, that's a real thing. I can attest to somebody who travels all over the world. When I'm in a hotel and I'm out of my regular home routine, I work more than I normally would if I were home, right? And it's the same in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Missing out on the body language, right? You don't get all the nonverbals.
Printing and scanning. Yeah, that's a real technical thing, huh?
Right.
And assessing the home environment.
Right, getting releases signed. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things. No unannounced anything. Really good point. Wow.
It's true.
Yeah, residential kids, harder to get access. I'm just curious, has anybody had any contact with any parents who are incarcerated or kids who are in lockup?
No UAs. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, when you don't have good cell service at home and internet is spotty, that's exactly how your families feel that don't have it either, right? And so it's extra challenging to feel like you can stay connected. Yep, substance abuse treatment or consultations, right? If families don't want to talk, they don't respond to the invite. This is like when you're standing at the front door and they don't open it. And you're like, I see you. I know you're in there.
Safety planning. I saw that kind of fly by on the screen here. Laura, I think that's your comment. Hard to build in third parties. We were going to talk about plan networks to these things a little later on in the call.
Assessing DV is really tricky. I'm psyched to say that David Mandel with Safe and Together has put out on his website a danger assessment tool And so Cassie, I can forward that resource along to folks if that would be helpful. That gives you a checklist and some really good tips for partnering with survivors right now. So I will make sure that that's a resource that gets shared as well.
Yeah, that would be great. And I don't want to put Sam on the spot. I know she's here and there might be some other DV specialists here too, but
yeah,
and
please weigh in if you're on the call.
For sure, here and accessible, not only in these big groups, but in districts, right? To help people try to get their brain around how to assess things remotely. Please.
Anybody want to unmute to speak to the DV and especially around assessment and planning?
Sam's mic isn't working, so we will let her off the hook.
Darn it.
Can I jump in? This is Jill.
Hey,
Sure.
Jill. With the
don't have-
beach background, I love it. You got the winter hat on in the beach.
And the beach. I have taken the TUCOF since the last micro learning, so I'm home for that. Anyways, we're going to do a weekly flyer, a Homebound Heroes theme on domestic violence towards the end of April. So we can highlight some of those resources as well. I know we want them sooner than that. Out to people, but also there will be a kind of a collection of tools and resources and links for people to be able to focus on that we're pulling together right now. Just wanted to kind of highlight that.
Thanks, Jill. Super helpful. One thing I want to quickly address where Harmony, you said it's really difficult now that families are seeing into your homes and into your family dynamics. Anything you can do to protect from that, like using these virtual backgrounds, they're a little bit funky if you don't have good lighting. Like people recommend a green screen to have like that perfect sense where they can see you move and you don't look like you're becoming part of the background. But if you can even put up a sheet behind you or something that makes you feel like you're more anonymous. I know that's not possible if you're the only parent with a child at that moment and you have to hold that child. But being able to kind of think about creative strategies that kind of can protect your anonymity to some degree. Anybody who has examples of that, feel free to share, but I think I've seen some staff that have been able to do that well.
The other piece is just, I want to be clear about why we're asking these parts, is that we'll track all this stuff in the chat. You know, Nancy and Heather and I had a planning call where Nancy kept saying, I don't want to speak for you, Nancy, but as a consultant, she really wants to know these places where people are stuck so we can kind of brainstorm how to support folks working through it. Yeah. So the chat is not like a black hole. It gets all typed up at the end and then we'll have it and we can use it to inform our planning about future offerings for everybody.
Harmony, thanks for the follow-up. I'm glad you're doing well with it, and I'm glad you brought it up. Carolina, thanks for a cool tip. The easiest is to go out and sit in the car, right? So that's another way that you can have a private space, right, to keep your content confidential as well as maybe some anonymity. But it is really hard to keep privacy when you have kids in the home. I think wearing earbuds, right, is another really good tip where your audio is protected by this little mic and it blocks out all the noise around you. And so people won't hear your family banging around behind you. Okay.
As this is kind of winding down, yeah, it is an awkward thing to be talking and then stop and read the chat.
I know.
But Pete had a great tip about being in front of a white wall, right?
Yeah.
Which creates kind of like a neutral place and good
blank canvas. Yeah, good.
So I'm going to put us back into groups. You'll go back into the same groups and we're going to ask you to answer this question next. And then I'll pull it up just so you can look at it for those who like to see it before we send you in, which is essentially, what do you need? And this is not because we think we have all the answers or the ability to meet all the needs right now, but if we're not asking, then we're not doing our jobs to be figuring out what you need moving forward. So we want to know what you need in order to be doing your job effectively. And by that, I mean specifically in the realm of remote assessment and planning. So jot it down if you'd like. And I'm gonna send you into those rooms again. And we'll do another 5 minutes and then we'll come back, okay?
Thanks.
Accept your invitations. Hello. Welcome back. Other folks will be joining us momentarily.
Okay.
Great. Here everybody comes. All right. Welcome back. I think we're waiting on just a few more. So what came out of that discussion? What are some of the things you're needing? You can chat away or ask, unmute and jump in.
Well, I always like to go first, apparently. We had talked about having checklists to have in advance of calling your families and, you know, like just covering those basic needs and making sure people have access to that or if they need something. And so my suggestion was I'm a case aide in the Middlebury office. And you know, I don't know the parameters around what if it would be acceptable for us to do or not, but it could be helpful if we do have a checklist of basic needs for the family that we could make those phone calls and say, do you have, you know, food? Do you have diapers? Do you have how to get in touch with unemployment? That kinds of things. And then bring that information to the social workers. And then when they make phone calls to families, they can address specific needs and also casework that needs to be done instead of just covering the basics.
That's helpful.
I see over here in the chat a way to ensure that families have the technology.
That's a big piece we keep hearing over and over again.
I would love to know like exactly what the need is. And I'm wondering, I'm just sort of making a note over here to myself, like I wonder if any of our federal partners or if there's any grants available at this time to get technology into the hands of families.
I am hearing that big national foundations are doing that. I know that Annie E. Casey, I think, is buying laptops for a jurisdiction for their workforce that doesn't have the technology. I know some have been willing to purchase kind of loaner iPads or tablets where you could loan them to a family for a period of time, or even just during one visit where you say, I'm going to be in my car, we're going to be on the phone, I want you to come out and get this, I'm going to leave this laptop so you can give me a virtual tour of the house, or that you can, you know what I mean, let them borrow it and then you sanitize the device when it comes back out. So in particular, where you really believe there's been COVID exposure, taking extra precautionary measures and sharing technology could be extra important. Yeah, Nance, I'm going to keep my ears out for that. I know there's an international call this week with leaders and we can learn more. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
So I have a brood of kids at home myself, and I'm struggling with the schooling piece. And selfishly, I wish the schools would just say school year is ended, because I think that it's a struggle for me. I think it's a struggle for a lot of our families that we work with. I think it's really difficult and convoluted where we have truancy cases and neglect cases, and we're expecting these families who already struggle with education and getting to school to then be doing that stuff at home, and it just further exacerbates this imbalance educationally for those kiddos who don't have the technology, don't have parents at home who can teach them what needs to be taught. And I think that school for me is something that needs to be done for my family, but it's also really confusing as to how we work with some of those families who are so impoverished that like they barely have a landline and food. So to talk to them about instruction for their kids who have behavioral and educational needs through IEPs who don't get those services, like it's really daunting to think about how to talk to that family about how to help them be successful when we can't offer them what they really need.
Ashton, there was a publication yesterday that showed exactly how much time a day per age group you should be homeschooling your kids. And I don't know if anybody else saw that, but it's a very, very small amount of time. And I don't know that our families know that. And especially if you're a mom with 4 kids and 1 iPhone for the whole household and your Wi-Fi is sketchy, I mean, good Lord, right? So the more we can help them get, you know, paper games and toys and other activities to do and not be so focused on that, I think would really benefit folks. These are desperate times. They call for desperate measures, and normalizing that it's okay to not be this master juggler of all these things with very limited resources, I think is part of the job we need to do for ourselves and then pass that message on to them.
Heather, do you have that literature? Can
Yeah,
you
I'll send it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
One of the problems, though, about the limited amount of time it takes to homeschool is that if you are a family that has multiple children, you're being told that the teachers are only available at certain hours of the day, and it tends to always be the same hours. So the multiple children all have to be engaged at the same time, and they don't necessarily understand how to get on or what's necessary and what's optional and what's not. I'm getting like 30 emails, 40 emails a week from school alone, just trying to sort out 2 children.
Oh.
And I'm sitting at the computer all day, and I've got a husband who's doing this with them. So it's just overwhelming. It really is.
It is. And so what we want you to think about is, who are your people? Like, who gets you through that? Find your person, whether it's, you know, outside of your household. So it's your best friend, it's a peer in the work, it's your supervisor, it's anybody who can, I think, help you feel like you've got an outlet to kind of vent a little bit or brainstorm strategies with. Normalize when you're exhausted and you didn't get it all done. You can't be expected to get it all done. And so how do you minimize your priorities to what you absolutely know should be the highest priority and try to let some of the other stuff go? I know for me, I'm a recovering perfectionist. So my whole MO has always been, not only do I have to get it all done, it has to be perfect. Well, guess what? That has not served me very well in the best of times, never mind in a pandemic, right? So the more that we can, I think, use each other to do that, the better. And the more we can help remind the schools and remind other providers of this is the kind of support the family needs. Can we share the load? Are there network members in these families' lives? An auntie who lives alone but can't be in the home, who could virtually be texting their niece or nephew and helping out with some of this stuff? Anything we can do to share the load, I think will help in this time.
And I'm going to jump in here. We can keep talking about these parts, but I want to do a little screen share while we are. And I didn't want
the tips and tricks.
Yeah, because we're running low on time. And so one of the things that we kind of chatted about when we were putting this together was the idea that we wanted to offer you something, right? Or many somethings. But what we know is that really what's going to be successful here is connecting with our families and working through what's accessible to them and what's available to them, and then what you can support them through, right? There's no magic bullet for how to be able to get in the house you can't get in, or support a parent to figure out how they can say no to some of that homeschooling piece. So we put these few together, and on the invite that we sent out, there's 3 articles. There's the one about the 3 stages, and then there's 2 other that come from NCCD with some like remote tips. Heather, I think that you were going to maybe share a little bit more about. Yeah.
So, you know, this idea of connection before correction is this old adage, you know, in our field, and that idea of having a sense of, how am I before I get on the phone? Like, am I connecting with myself? Am I grounded and feeling prepared before I get on a call? Checking in with a peer, your supervisor, if you're feeling kind of untethered, can be really helpful. And then you can get focused in on meeting with that family and feeling prepared before you meet. What exactly do I have to ask about? What's related to the initial allegations or the most current worries we've been having with this family? What's the purpose of my call? How long do I think it's probably on average going to need to be? And getting yourself organized first can really, really help. Some of the other resources around safety assessment and planning. If you do have to do a particular interview that you're anxious about, can you tag team it? Can you have a peer join virtually as well, or be conferenced into that call? Sometimes it's nice, like when you're trying to gather your thoughts while they're talking and then you can switch, it gives you guys an opportunity to maybe handle some more difficult conversations, especially when we're talking about like maybe a DV situation where the person causing the harm is using COVID and this whole situation and the stress of it to justify their behavior. And you know, you've got an opportunity to do some intervention. Using kids to give video tours. There's one of the handouts is on successful video conferencing and interviewing kids. The research that this is based on is actually kind of cool, and it's outlined in the article. But it kind of breaks down kids of certain ages, like little ones. Like if you need to be on with a toddler or a 3-year-old, they can't learn by seeing a video instructional of how to do something. They learn by direct interaction. So if you wave at a child and then show them how to do something, or you ask them a question and then they give you an answer and then you ask them another question, they can see that you're actually real even though you're on the screen. Whereas older kids obviously interact without any difficulty most of the time, but if there's a developmental delay or other reasons, using games, you know, engaging them by activity seems to, just like when you're sitting at their kitchen table, to be just as effective on video conferencing. So there's a lot more tips and tricks in that article. I've gotten a lot of questions about, I need to interview this kid solo. I can't go into this particular house. How do I do that? And so I want you to think about strategies that you've used where you might be able to say, you know, hey, can you bring the child to the door? Or can the child come out into the yard, you know, and then go back in? Or if parent really insists on being present, just like they do when we go face to face, you know, they could potentially be in earshot kind of around the corner in another room with the door open, but that they understand your need to interview their child as though they are one-on-one and that they don't know their parent is nearby. And so, you know, doing the best you can is what's being asked, and knowing that it's good enough. I think the other thing is around, you know, the platform that best fits the purpose of your meeting with a family. You know, doing a full family meeting with multiple network members, you want to use the Skype for Business or the Teams or a platform like Zoom with a provider. Whereas, you know, it's okay to use FaceTime if you're just doing a check-in to follow up, maybe after a meeting like that where they've changed their safety plan. Safety plans might need to have additions added to them based on some COVID-related complications that have come up since, right? They've been in a stay-at-home order. So I just want to check in and see what the chat is bringing us before we keep going.
I've heard, I'll just chime in a little bit. I've heard checklists mentioned a few times. And I think one of another silver lining with conducting assessments remotely is that nobody's going to see our checklist that we have over here on the side. Like I've got my checklist right now for this training, and none of you can see it, although I just gave myself away. You know, because I think when we're in person and sitting in somebody's living room, sometimes it feels really awkward to pull out like the checklist. Like, okay, have I talked about everything I wanted to talk about here today? Yeah. But I would encourage people to, in the absence of having a central office issued checklist or a CRC issued checklist, like go ahead and make your own checklist and build on it as you go, because something that, you know, things that come up in an assessment last week may also come up in the assessment that you have next week. And I think we can all sort of build on what we have.
Nancy, the safety assessment handout actually could be easily, if you just take the steps. So it's got steps with detail underneath each one. After you've kind of oriented the family and gotten yourself organized, you're really using the tool itself, right, to inform your critical thinking. And starting with how vulnerable is the most vulnerable child in this home? Number one thing to kind of shape your logic, and that can guide how rigorous this interview has to be. And so we don't want you to overthink it, and we don't want you to underthink it, right? So if that can help you, it gives you some things to consider during the interview, 7 key things, and then some additional thoughts around domestic violence, substance abuse, and mental health. And there's links in the e-version of that to resources online so that families can get remote and online resources around substance use. All of the AA and NA meetings are held online now. There's a lot of resources in there for self-care for folks who are struggling with their mental health stuff and it's getting exacerbated, or there's domestic violence links there as well. And then obviously bringing the network in. If you can get one additional person to join a call with you, it can go a long way in reducing your anxiety about how safety is being attended to in that home.
That safety assessment with the links, Heather, that you just
Yes.
mentioned.
Yep.
Do
You
we have that?
It was attached. Yep, to
Okay,
the
great.
invite. Yep, it's
Great.
titled Child Welfare Safety Assessment and Planning During COVID-19 and Social
Yeah.
Distancing. Yeah, I think it's like 3 pages. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in, and this doesn't mean that we can definitely circle back and do questions, but I'm aware that some folks might need to hop off right at 2 for their next thing. So in the invite that you went into to join this meeting, there's a couple of resource articles, and there is a survey link, and it's this same link, so you can write this down, or you could just click it from the invite. We do ask that you'll have to enter in the name of the training, which was remote assessment planning, the date, and the trainer. And even though Nancy and Heather really trained this, for our purposes, we're tracking this one, so you can just put my name. But if there's pieces that you want more detail of, like the evaluation is a great place to let us know, because we'll use that to build future microlearnings. We're assuming that this is just scratching the surface on this topic, and we'll need to do a whole lot more with it. But if there's questions you have, or requests you have for future, kind of topics and deeper dives, by all means, please fill us out and please let us know there. That makes sense. And I'm gonna stop sharing this screen so we can see each other's faces again, because I feel like that's really important.
Any other burning questions? I like the, Hannah, you wrote a really nice message about if there's one thing at the end of all this that we want to keep intact, it's our kids' mental health and our own sanity, right, over their academics. My academic friends have reassured me kids are not going to fall behind. They're not going to miss a grade most of the time, right? Most kids are going to figure this out, and school districts are already having conversations about how to pick up where we left off when we get together again in classrooms. So I think people are trying to be extra thoughtful about this. And so any anxiety you're holding on to, we hope that this kind of gives you a little bit of relief that there are very smart people thinking this through. And hopefully you guys won't have to worry about any unintended consequences as a result.
So kind of a last piece before we close up is I'd love you to type into the chat one takeaway or final thought. It's going to help us, and it's also, we're hoping, ground any learning that occurred here. Your micro learning. And while people are typing in, I want to thank you for joining us and taking time out of your super busy days. Questions about any of this, feel free. I'll hang here in the chat. I don't know for sure, but I'm thinking that Nancy and Heather can hang too for a minute.
You bet. Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to disappear. And also feel free to email us, put it in the survey. There's other ways that we can kind of track anything that you need. Go from there.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so cool. Yeah, thanks everybody.
I'm not sure if everyone knows this, but the text chat all gets captured in the video recording as well. So this is, I'll be there later.
Thanks, Pete.
And this might be a good time to let you know that next week's micro learning is targeted for leaders. That doesn't mean that only leaders can join. You're all welcome, but it's around creating a virtual supportive culture. And then the one after that is going to target the youth justice world. And we will continue to get those uploaded, or begin and then continue to get those uploaded to our portal pretty soon. So thanks for joining us. And as you type in your takeaways, feel free to say goodbye. In one of our meetings, everyone unmuted themselves and yelled bye before we signed off. It felt really nice.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, unmute and yell goodbye.
Bye.
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 And it's funny
Not
when we all
doing
sit
that.
here.
They're like, unmute yourself and say goodbye. How do I exit this?
Bottom right.
Leave meeting in red.
I like this. This is helpful.
Yep, it's good.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, cool.
Any
Laura,
last-
we can still see you. Are you hanging out with us?
No, I will uninvite myself.
No, you can click leave meeting. But
Just
if
being nosy.
anybody still on, have some burning questions or some follow-up?
No, I also was just trying to find the tab to
Yeah.
get out.
Yep, leave meeting is in the controls in the bottom.
I'm excited about doing
I was doing my survey.
Awesome.
Good job. Thanks, Amy.
Me too.
Keneally, do you have a question or are you also stuck in limbo?
No, I'm not stuck in limbo, but my boyfriend introduced this thing where he tries to be in the the last 10 to exit a Zoom meeting. And I just think it's like a fun, stupid challenge. So
I love it.
now refuse to leave until the vast majority of people are gone.
Great. I actually did just think of something though.
Yeah.
Did you guys watch did you see, and it's happening on Friday too, the NICWE supporting the workforce well-being? It was yesterday and it's happening on Friday.
Yeah.
No.
I've got colleagues that are attending it because I'm unavailable.
I thought it was
both of
really
those
good
times.
and it
Was it?
might be it might be good to watch to incorporate into next week's. I thought there were really good strategies and ideas. So
Great,
Thanks.
thanks.
anywho.
Yeah, and I think that's being
Thanks, Amy.
recorded as well, so recordings could be shared.
What was that?
I think it's being recorded as well, so the
It
NICWE
is, yeah.
recording could be shared as
Yeah.
a link for folks too, after
Yeah.
if they can't make it.
Yeah, it was good.
Awesome.
All right, bye for real.
Keneally, you win. I'm leaving. Bye.
Bye, Pete.
I think we're good.
All right, thanks you guys. Bye, Tabitha.
Everybody.
I'm in the bottom 5. This is good.